In 1971, the average American house cost about 2.5 times what a family made in a year. Today, it's more than 5 times that. So everyone says the same thing. Houses got expensive. But here's the weird part. Your grandparents were buying houses when mortgage rates eventually hit almost 19%. So if borrowing money was that expensive, how are people still buying houses? The answer isn't what you think. This is a video about why buying a house feels structurally different now than it did 50 years ago, using actual Federal Reserve and census data, not vibes. If you've ever pulled up a listing in your city, looked at the price, then looked at your paycheck, and felt something close to despair, this is for you, because you've probably heard the boomer version of this conversation. Just save more. We didn't have avocado toast. You've also probably heard the angry version. They got everything handed to them and pulled the ladder up. Both of those are wrong, and the actual answer is more interesting than either. Here's the popular explanation, and it's not crazy, it's just incomplete. The story goes, houses were cheap in the 70s and 80s. Your grandparents bought a 3-bedroom for the price of a used car today. Down payment was nothing, life was simple. And the price part of that is true. A house really was cheaper relative to income back then. But here's what that explanation conveniently leaves out. Mortgage rates in the early 1980s reached levels that are almost unimaginable today. We're talking numbers that make a 7% rate look like a gift. So if borrowing money was that expensive, how were people still buying houses? Well, the answer isn't what you think. Your grandparents didn't have it easy. They had a different kind of hard. They fought a war against interest rates. You're fighting a war against principle, and those are not the same fight. One of them you can eventually escape, and one of them you basically can't. Let me show you the actual numbers. In 1970, the average 30-year mortgage rate was around 7.3%. Normal, nothing dramatic. By 1979, it had climbed past 11%. By October of 1981, it peaked at 18.63%. That's the highest 30-year mortgage rate ever recorded by Freddie Mac. Not close to the highest, the highest. Let's put that in real terms. In 1981, the median home price was just over $66,000. Say you put 20% down. That's about $13,200. You're financing roughly $52,800. At 18.63% over 30 years, that comes out to a monthly principal and interest payment of about $830 on a $66,000 house. That's a family paying nearly $10,000 a year, most of it going straight to interest before they've made a dent in the actual house. But here's where it gets interesting. If your grandparents were getting hammered by the rate and the house was still technically affordable, then the thing that made it affordable wasn't the rate, it was the price, which means we need to look at the price side separately. This is the number that actually explains everything, and it's called the price-to-income ratio. Median home price divided by median household income. Simple math, huge implications. In 1970, that ratio was around 2.3 times income. Some datasets put the 1980s a little higher, closer to 3.5 times. Either way, call it 2.5 to 3.5 years of gross income to match the price of a house. Today, that ratio sits at roughly 5.4 to 5.6 times income, depending on which dataset you use. Translate that into something you can actually feel. Your grandparents needed to save up something like 2 or 3 years of their total income to match a house price. You need over 5. And this isn't a regional quirk you can dodge by picking the right city. Look at the 50 largest metro areas in the country. Not one of them sits at or below the traditional affordable threshold of 2.6 times income. Not the cheap ones, not the expensive ones. None of them. So here's the part that should genuinely mess with your head. I took that $830 monthly payment from 1981 and adjusted it for inflation into today's dollars. It becomes almost $3,000 a month. Then I took the median household income from 1981, $22,390, and adjusted that too. It becomes just under $80,000 a year. Then I checked the actual median household income in 2024, $83,730. Almost identical, which means when you strip away the nostalgia and just look at the real inflation-adjusted math, housing affordability today is close to what it was during one of the worst affordability crises in American history. Not better, not dramatically worse, close to the same. So if the overall pain is roughly similar, what's actually different? Why does this feel so much worse now than it apparently felt then? Here's the mechanism, and this is the whole point of the video. In 1981, the pain was sitting in the interest rate, and interest rates move. They're temporary by nature. When rates dropped through the rest of the 80s, homeowners who bought at 18% refinanced down to 9%, then later even lower. Their monthly payment could get cut in half without them doing anything except waiting and refinancing. The pain had an exit door. Today, the pain is sitting in the principal, in the actual price of the house relative to what you make. And principal doesn't work like a rate. It doesn't drop because the Fed changes policy. It doesn't refinance. If you pay 5 times your income for a house, you owe 5 times your income for that house, permanently, baked into the loan from day one. Your grandparents' problem was expensive money. Yours is an expensive asset. One can fall when rates fall. The other only comes down through wages, prices, or time. Your grandparents were sprinting through a bad decade. You're carrying a heavier backpack for the whole race. A few honest caveats, because this topic gets oversimplified constantly, and I'm not going to do that to you. First, these are national numbers. Your actual metro might be dramatically worse than the 5.08 national ratio, or in a handful of Midwest and Southern markets, meaningfully better. Second, the exact before ratio depends on which dataset you use. Some put the 1970s at 2.3 times income, others the early 80s closer to 3.5 times. I gave you the range instead of picking whichever number looked most dramatic. And third, price to income isn't the whole affordability picture. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, lending standards, and household size all matter too. This video is about the core mechanism, not the entire equation. Here's why this actually matters beyond just being an interesting fact. If you think your problem is the interest rate, if you're sitting there waiting for rates to drop before you buy, you're solving the wrong half of the equation. Rates go up, rates go down. That's not the part that's historically unusual right now. The principal to income gap is the unusual part, and that doesn't fix itself on a Fed announcement. Understanding which lever is actually broken changes what kind of advice is even worth listening to. So, 2.5 times income in 1970, over 5 times today. That's the number we started with. But now you know it was never really a story about greedy boomers or lazy millennials. It's a story about where the pain moved. From a rate you could eventually escape to a price tag you can't. The house didn't get more expensive out of nowhere. The kind of struggle it takes to own one just changed shape. If you want to see this same calculation done city by city, New York, Austin, Miami, Chicago, and the handful of places where the math still actually works, that's the next video.